Over the years, I've had quite an interest in archaeology and also ancient history, which of course has to do with archaeology. So I ran across this statement in the Greek historian's writing, his name's Herodotus, that described how these were built. And then I was reading an archaeological magazine that told about the sunboat that they had found by the pyramid, and that they had found a lot of wooden things in there. Some of them would not fit on the boat. After they got the boat completely finished, they had these things left over. They didn't know what they were used for, so they put them in storage. As it turns out, those were timbers from these pyramid building machines. And then in the hieroglyphics, pardon me, out at Saqqara, they had some bas relief hieroglyphics that showed the working mechanism of this machine.
What you see here is an entrance marker to part of the tomb complex of Onias, one of the 3rd dynasty pharaohs. Now here is a cartouche that tells us who this man was. You'll note that the cartouche is laying on its side instead of standing upright. This represents the fact that this person is dead. You'll notice that the symbols inside the cartouche are still upright. Now these things represent one of the many deities of Egypt. Therefore they do not die. Just the man himself dies, and these transmigrate into the next pharaoh in line. What we have here, reading from right to left, is Onias died. We have the spade, symbolizing the fact that they buried him. And then we have the symbols of the pyramid building machines. And this also means to build. It appears in front of symbols of temples and this sort of thing.
Now then, a blow-up of these strange objects that we see in the hieroglyphs up here is this. And you will notice that if you pull this curved lever downward, that this portion will be raised here. All right, now as a glyph, then we will find that this is just the right-hand portion of this glyph, and if in your imagination you can place another symmetrical mirror image of this object, then you have a lifting mechanism. Now Herodotus, the father of history, a Greek historian that traveled with the Persian army and on his own in antiquity, states in his book that the pyramids were built in steps or different levels, and that the Egyptians used a contrivance made of short timbers that lifted the stone from one level to the other. There's been several people that we've discussed this with that have wondered if this would indeed lift a fairly heavy load. Now, so we built a large variety of this machine. Now we just put 3 sets of levers here, which of course this will demonstrate that it doesn't take a whole lot of levers or sets of these levers to lift pretty heavy load. Now we have a compact car here which approximates the weight of the average stone on the pyramids. So we'll at this time attempt to lift this car. Okay, you have seen a demonstration here that this machine will indeed lift a fairly heavy load. Now, an engineer that I asked to do a little study on this and give me an idea of what the maximum capabilities of a machine like this were, said that it is possible to lift 500 tons 60 feet into the air with a machine built or constructed of wood.
Along with the hieroglyphs and the description in Herodotus' histories of how these large monuments were constructed, we have found around the base of the pyramid holes in the stone. Now these are at the proper distance to anchor the machines that were used to lift the stones up the sides of the pyramids. There's a cluster of these holes in this particular area, and the multi-lift machine was anchored here and over to the south of this area. This is where the stones for the burial chamber itself were lifted up. Also where the different tiers are, the stepped stones were lifted into place. Now there are other sets of holes all around the perimeter of the pyramid. This is where the lesser stones machines were anchored.
I'm going to say a few words about the pyramid building machines. Is Nasif Hassan. He's the director of antiquities in Egypt, and he will give you an idea of what he believes about how the pyramids were built.
Now I am very glad to see that this machine, which Mr. Wyatt showed me, and I think maybe they used something like that, because there in hieroglyphs we know that this cartouche of Onis tomb in the western side of the Great Pyramid, and also this letter means Nefer, means the beautiful, and these three little signs exactly maybe show us another machine or another parts of machine or something like that, maybe of wood or maybe of anything else. And when I read about this machine which they used, I think it is suitable for lift each block for a stage to another, and they use many machines in order to lift these blocks of wood, and it is suitable for huge blocks of granite and for limestone. And the treatment which I have seen on the television or something here at Egypt, and it is a suitable thing to lift.
Okay, we have gotten 3 of these machines set up on the different steps of the pyramids here in order to demonstrate how these magnificent monuments were constructed. Now, the Minister of the Antiquities asked us not to use a stone because of the possibility that the stone might be dropped and damage the pyramids. These, although they look well preserved from a distance, there's a lot of loose rocks and occasionally a stone will fall, and we don't wish to damage these. So we're using a carton or a large box to illustrate the process. So if you will watch, they have lowered the first machine, or the lowest machine, into position, and they're lifting the rock, or in this case the carton, up to the full height of this machine. Now, of course, when the pyramids were new, you didn't have the ragged stones placed around on the structure to get in the way, and so things were much easier. At this particular time, with these stones in the way, it makes it more difficult to get the proper idea of how they accomplished this. Now they move the carton back to the next machine. Now we feel that they had a winch device that sat on top of the machine, that the second machine and the third machine, and that a loop of rope was thrown out over the stone, and with using sand beneath the stone, they were able to slide it along over to the machine that was behind and up on the next step. Now this, of course, meets Herodotus' description, and due to the fact that he only was able to see a hieroglyph, he described them as a contrivance. Now when we get to the top of this second machine, of course, you see there is a third machine that could be lowered down and the stone placed on that and taken higher. And then step by step, you slowly work your way up the top or up the side of this pyramid. And as you can see at this present time, you would not want to venture too far up the side with these machines, because you definitely get into trouble. And there have been several people that have fallen to their death by trying to climb these stones, because many of them are loose from the weathering and from the fact that the stones that supported them have fallen away. But these machines could be fastened to each other, and they could be tied by ropes, the top machines, to the point that it was impossible or nearly impossible to have much of an accident. Now, as they got to the top of the pyramid, they started filling in the steps with stones cut for that purpose, and these were, of course, harder stones that prevented water from getting in and eroding away the sides of the pyramid, which, of course, is what's happened at this point. Some of the later rulers and the local populace felt that this was an ideal place to quarry stones, so rather than go off a few miles away and perhaps bring the stones across the river, they came over here and got stones off these structures. And of course these stones are already cut.
Before Joseph's experience there in the story that's related in the Bible about him and the famine and his dreams and all that, Egypt was a collection of city-states with very little, if any, political affiliation. And when the famine was over and the 7 years, during that 7 years, this Pharaoh Djoser was elevated to the most wealthy individual in the world, because this famine extended up into Canaan. As you know, Jacob had to send his sons down to get food, and so anyway, suddenly this man just had beaucoup gold and everything else, and it appears that he wanted to be immortalized, in stone. A lot of people do that today. They build big buildings and that sort of thing. So anyway, he went to Imhotep. He was commissioned to build a memorial that would last and perpetuate or immortalize the memory of this Djoser.
Ron was not trying to figure out how the pyramids were built. He had studied ancient history and was familiar with what Herodotus had written when he first went to Egypt to see the step pyramid. When he saw the hieroglyph at Onias's tomb, God revealed to him its interpretation. Just as God had given Joseph the interpretation of Pharaoh's dream, I believe without a doubt he gave Ron insight in the same manner and showed him how the pyramids were built.